They said Earth was gone, a husk shattered and consumed by oblivion. Yet in that silence a pulse of defiance beat, an armada of human warships, rising from exile to retake its heritage. From hope and vengeance the galaxy quaked. All in that moment, fate met rebellion, and with it an intergalactic reckoning. In the grand design of the universe, a shadow myth long permeated the stars, that Earth, a birthplace of humanity, had faded into nothingness. For centuries, alien emissaries and conquerors recounted the story with a sense of hubris and awe. Without long-range weapons powerful enough to stop such an assault, the ancient logs and intercepted transmissions had shown Earth forces' mighty defenses crumbling as they fell to a relentless barrage of better armaments. Alien invaders, assured of their vicious power, had ravaged the solar system, a disease that annihilated fleets, leveled expanses of cities, and laid the once great spawning ground of human ingenuity to ashes. The once blue gem of the Milky Way was now nothing more than a burned, dead husk, a testament of total defeat. Yet amid this story of despair, a lavish celebration played out among the victors. In the luxurious command halls of the alien armada, among their most senior commanders and warlords, leaders drunk on their victory spoke with pomposity. They reveled at how they had snuffed one of the last embers of humanity's fire, ruthlessly, precisely, ending an age. They wore trophies of broken human technology as bone decoration, and their tales of conquest grew taller with each telling. They thought the problem was they were now too strong, not that they were too weak to even consider grazing the human race. But, beneath this angelic jubilation, there lingered a whisper of defiance in the void. In the void of space, where despair echoed in the silence, a difference made itself felt. A signal that would have been scarcely detectable to most observers, something no different than a heartbeat somewhere buried in the white noise of oblivion, began to reverberate across the cosmic void. Some dismissed it as a throwback to another era, a final cry from a world that was about to die. But to those with the sharpest senses, this was an omen of something more scarific, a proclamation that humanity had not yet been given a requiem. In the edge of death on a broken star system, in the debris and dust shrouded by fallen satellites of husk, a secret council of human survivors huddle. They bore the scars of loss, yet possessed the most unquenchable spirit, carrying with them the legacy of a people who had once dreamed of reaching the stars. Whispers of their makeshift bases, built in secret on asteroid belts and abandoned sectors of space stations, thrummed with muted urgency. Every transmission they eavesdropped on, every piece of data they recovered, was painstakingly combed for glimmers of hope. In their hearts, the coals of rebellion had never been snuffed out, only waiting for the time to transform into a raging flame of revenge. However, in the heart of the void, the preparations were afoot on a scale immeasurable, unbeknownst to the alien conquerors. Far outside of their surveillance net, an armada of human warships left the interstellar shadows. Now these ships, made in exile and seasoned in the fires of ceaseless conflict, were fitted with experimental technologies and clandestine armaments, instruments forged for not flight, but a return with a vengeance. And at the head of this fleet stood Admiral Elias Marlowe, a man whose steely resolve had been dulled by years of losing and unfulfilled promises. His eyes, a mix of scars from past fights and the acanthus glow of new hope, told the tale of a man who had witnessed the worst of humanity's suffering and had made it his mission to turn that suffering into an arm to strike against tyranny. For Marlowe and his crew, the stakes were off the charts. The stakes could not have been higher, for the world would have to be irrevocably erased, the final act, after having managed, against all odds, to inspire dreams and hopes. Success, in contrast, would be an irrefutable rebuttal of the arrogance of the alien overlords, a message from the wreckage of Earth, not beaten. It was a melodious summon to every living ancestor across the vastness of the cosmos, a promise that the heart of mankind remained as unyielding as the stars themselves. So, even as the alien commanders savored their victory, a chain of events was begun that would soon explode the illusion of human extinction. The first distant beat of that strange signal had been caught, and it brought murmurs of a reckoning to come. Humanity was ascending once again, not as a beleaguered, desperate remnant, but as a power to be reckoned with, poised to reclaim its rightful place in the universe. Every star system, every remote outpost, now held its breath in anticipation, realizing that the very story of Earth was about to be rewritten. The invaders, once confident in their victory, would soon be confronted with a reality they had long ignored, which was that the spirit of humanity could not so easily be extinguished. The first flames of war, cutting through the silence of space. The alien spearhead, believing itself invulnerable, had unbrokenly fanned its lines across the star lanes. Their wave formations, a dance of cold metal and lethal energy, were the chord of a hyperprocess sent to envelop the outer rim of the human advance. Commanders, holding court in the alien flagship of dread and majesty, grimaced and spat vituperations from their sanctified citadel brooding palaces. Their plan was simple: swamp the enemy with numbers and blunt force. They anticipated little opposition, assuming the myth of humanity's extinction would be born true. But when the first barrage of plasma fire blinked into the void, it was clear that the human fleet was no longer the broken remnant the invaders had thought it to be. While emerging from the dark recess of deep space, the human warships had shown their defiant mastery of maneuver and counterattack. Admiral Elias Marlowe, his flagship roused to calm fury that masked the carnage around him, had executed a brilliant, if doomed, plan. His fleet swarmed like a pack of determined predators, twitching in sudden uncertainty. They performed fast, sweeping turns that took advantage of the alien armada's closest spaces. Deep within the struggle, the human architects revealed a covert weapon. A pulse cannon birthed in the darkness of concealed colonies' laboratories. This weapon, a product of years of isolation and deprivation, shot out destabilizing energy bursts. The alien ships, based in a rigid backbone of advanced technology, quivered as their shields crumpled under the unyielding barrage. The silence of space was punctuated by explosions, and as they tore holes in the alien ships, the wreckage was thrown out, pieces of heavy armor spinning into the void. The invaders were forced to rethink their formerly unquestioned supremacy. During the chaos, the human fleet exploited their familiarity with asymmetric warfare. Smaller, agile craft flitted amidst the maelstrom, striking at the enemy's soft points of the enemy: power conduits, weapon arrays, and command nodes. Each one that struck true was a statement of defiance. The alien commanders, who conjured up dreams of a swift, bloodless conquest, found themselves utterly unprepared for the savagery and unforeseen tenacity of their adversaries. The tactics of the human forces were so unpredictable everywhere that panic started to spread among the ranks of the invaders. Beneath the command decks of the human vessels, the crew operated with a synergy born of countless battles waged in exile. Every man and woman on board was aware of the stakes. Failure would mean the final, irreversible snuffing out of their civilization's fire. They executed orders with machine-like precision. The pulse cannon barked over and over again, its disruptive energy screaming through the fabric of their shields and leaving holes to concentrate attacks on. On one audacious pass, a wing of fighter pilots, juiced to the max, pulled a pincer maneuver as they surrounded a heavily armored alien destroyer. Their timed, coordinated strikes took out the ship's propulsion systems, leaving it crippled and adrift. The tide of invaders began to be pushed back as the battle raged on, the human fleet doing the impossible. Their tactics were not simply defensive moves. They were new strategies forged in decades of subjugation and defeat. Each new challenge was answered by countermeasures that fused sophisticated technology with sheer grit. The invaders' confidence possessed at first crumbled into uncertainty as the human warships exposed vulnerabilities that had long been masked by the facade of alien superiority. Because victory was not about how much firepower a side possessed any longer, it was fueled by the well of willpower and ingenious strategy. The battleground, once mere coordinates on a map, became a stage for an unlikely cast of heroes, individuals who transcended their roles to perform acts of bravery and defiance. The skirmish was no longer just a skirmish. It was a game of chess played at the highest levels and on the largest of boards, with each building block of the strategy the difference between extinction and salvation. The calculated aggression of the human fleet, coupled with their PSA, the human capacity for adaptation in the heat of battle, started to take a toll on the alien command structure. It was a clear message that the invaders, who once believed there would be no end to their victory already, needed to contend with an enemy that would not go down in history without a fight. This initial wave of conflict, however, with its unexpected turnarounds and its swelling tide of resistance, foreshadowed a struggle that would be a defining moment for both sides. As spacecraft shattered and the last stands fell, a single truth appeared. The human spirit, though broken and beleaguered, was far from crushed. But the initial confidence of the alien armada was beginning to unravel as the battle raged on. What had initially been planned as targeted strikes against strategic points became an unstoppable wave of revenge that the intruders never predicted. The human Warfleet's tactics had now graduated from their pilot years to a full-on military offensive where the enemy, who was at such an advantage due to their numbers, and who had faced the humans in the past, could only scramble to keep pace with an adversary that had become increasingly ruthless and unpredictable. Once accustomed to victory through the sheer might of its numbers, the alien commanders came to realize that the human fleet, far from offering a parley or a token fight, had come to extract bitter, bloody reek. Panic spread through the enemy lines as they saw their entire chain of command was being torn apart when they least expected it. Even as entire squadrons of human fighters scored hit-and-run strikes against alien fleets, destroying relay stations and severing links between ships, orders and desperate pleas crackled on the comms. Freedom fighters showed them how it's done. In one terrorizing hallmark of maneuvers, one division of human interceptors mounted a daring raid deep into the heart of enemy formation. They cut through the outer defenses and entered a key command ship where the alien upon their offensive had been organized. Within minutes, control panels across the vessel lit up in a frenzy of alarms and blinking red lights, debilitating its crew with confusion and disorder. The human raiders had even infiltrated her ship, only to move from chaos into chaos. But as they withdrew, their sabotage had created a ripple through the entire armada, sending them all into chaos. Commanders who had seemingly radiated rock-solid sovereignty were caught up in paralysis as their systems failed and their plans collapsed. The tide of battle changed even more dramatically when a concealed contingency, prepared long in advance in secrecy, was put into action. In anticipation of a worst-case scenario, human engineers deployed a network of stealthy drones armed with electromagnetic impulse devices. The drones, small and unremarkable next to the massive warships, zipped through the melee with a speed and accuracy that was unnerving. Their coordinated attacks took out field sections at a time of alien starfighters, leaving yawning gaps in an otherwise complete defensive barrier. What had once been an asset, because though they had invaded by force, they had the development advantage, had been their undoing, as each disabling pulse degraded the capitalistic efficiency of their operational integrity. As the confusion dispersed, the rage of the invaders fell into fear. News of multiple command ships devolving into chaos circulated through the ranks of the aliens like wildfire. Top brass who had orchestrated their conquest with brutal finesse were now frantically trying to spin orders that wouldn't paper over the swiftly overspreading siege. Hasty counteroffensive measures were taken, but every maneuver to bring the fleet to heel caused the cleavages within it to widen. Shying under the tutelage of manky spaces, and while the rationale consistency of the alien fleet broke down and ceased to bind its mighty ranks, exposed and defenseless. But the human fleet had its own sacrifices. Every win came at a cost, through furious gun battles and narrow escapes. The potential remained, everywhere, in the sparkling remnants of smashed-off ships and trails of burning energy in the wake of violent encounters. On each of the warships, the crew understood that freedom came at a cost, and with each lost brother, they were reminded of just what was on the line. The determination of these mortal soldiers only solidified even further with every second that passed, pushed onward by the united memory of a home never visited and the eager ire to take it back. Admiral Marlowe kept his steely resolve despite the intensifying carnage, commanding his fleet with a mixture of tactical genius and iron will. His voice, strong and unyielding over the comm channels, spurred his beleaguered crews. We fight not only for survival, but for the soul of Earth. Today we will show the galaxy that humanity's spirit is unbreakable. These exhortations, delivered amid the madness, inspired his fighters and focused their mission, the destruction of the edifice of alien bondage. With the extraterrestrial command hierarchy shattered and their coordinated strategy evaporated, the aggressors had to adopt a reactive posture. The battlefield, a once certain bastion of their dominance, had turned into a crucible of fear and desperation. The human warfleet pressed on, deploying with maximum force, leaving the alien fleets reeling, trying to organize a defense of their own. With each new strike, it was a declaration. Humanity wasn't just back, it was taking its rightful place among the stars. The tide of war swelled high, and the great human war fleet surged ever farther and more infinitely forward. Realizing they had to take extreme measures to push through the outer defenses, Admiral Marlowe commanded the flagship to penetrate the heart of the alien formation in a last-ditch effort. The entire fleet altered course instantly, thrusters blaring as the ships pointed their bows toward the enemy's command nexus. The Titanic flagship, already battered and bloody from previous struggles, cleaved through the swirling mass of designs and drones as if the invader were coarse fabric. The alien armada, already reeling from constant guerrilla strikes and crippling sabotage, was suddenly on the back foot. With the latest in clandestine technology and an indomitable need to break through, the human fleet executed a number of planned pincer moves. Swift and agile, these smaller vessels wove through widening holes in the enemy's ranks wrought by their unyielding bombardment to assail the most heavily shielded opposing warships. With stealthy, high-performance aircraft and precision-guided munitions, these craft struck quick and devastating blows that severed the invaders' defensive web. The blast of energy and metal that exploded outwards was no chaos. It was an orchestra of calculated destruction. Alien ships, once emblems of insuperable power, detonated in cascades of light and rubble as they became incidental victims of the human counteroffensive. A fusillade of energy bursts from the new pulse cannons knocked down enemy shields and left rent seams in their hulls. For every strike reverberated like the battle cry of a rebel, traveling through the vastness of space and shivering the alien higher-ups to their core. With every alien ship that fell, the human fleet pushed forward, every victory a tribute to the spine of a people the galaxy dared to write off. As the flagship neared the enemy's central command vessel, its tremendous engines hummed with the force of shared determination. The flagship vessel, which had been the indomitable nerve center of the alien expedition, shook violently from the ceaseless barrage of focused energy. In a titanic blast that illuminated the black void of space, the ship was ripped from inside out. The loss of this pivotal node sent ripples through the alien hierarchy. No longer did there seem to be any coherent chain of command, no overall strategy. It was replaced by chaos and disorder as the remaining enemy fleet floundered in an attempt to bring order in the onslaught. It was a moment that shattered every previous script ever written, with the galaxy looking on in stunned silence. The stunning victory of the human war fleet was not only a military triumph, it was a primal statement to all corners of the universe. The invincible image of the victor who crushed humanity gave way in an instant to the awesome spectacle of a reborn civilization, long stifled, now unleashed, long reserved power and fury laid bare. The dry brilliance of human tactics, spiced with white-knuckle, passionate stubbornness, had broken the illusion that Earth had been lost for all time. Every man and woman on those human warships felt the rush of vindication as that final hour settled in. As they watched the fruits of years of toil come to fruition, the heat in their souls burned true. All who fought this war knew, at last, the total truth, a truth from which there was no going back. Earth had never been defeated. The implacable evil they once believed they held dominion over was not for them. It belonged to another Earth. Each alien craft that vaporized under the storm of defensive fire, the more their conviction in their invulnerable nature faltered and gave way to a desperate bid for survival. Steadying himself behind the command screen on his flagship, Admiral Marlowe broadcasted one final directive, a battle cry that echoed around the comm channels and shattered the silence of the battlefield. Today, the galaxy will know. Humanity will rise from whatever grave you prepare for us. His words echoed as a rallying cry. imbued with the weight of collective hope and defiance. Driven by a singular purpose, the human Warfleet rampaged onward, leaving a swathe of broken alien dreams in its path. Indeed, the roar of victory rippled through the cosmos, for the human Warfleet would not relent, hammering home their advantage and following up a hard-won battle with an overwhelming win. The alien command structure was broken, with only chaos reigning among the remaining invaders. What was thought of as battered human forces now marched on with a stiff precision that turned every blow into a testament of theft and conviction. Marlowe, clinging to his flagship, launched one last, massive attack. Swathed in the hard-earned glory of countless battles, the warships gleamed with the light of a legacy forged in war. Years of secretive innovation and refined tactics culminated in their weapons, which released a wave of energy that left the enemy stunned. They were learned for a revenge, however, when they meant extinction, or rather, they meant the entire story of mankind to end that way. And the lasers burst in a doorway towards the past, and the pulse cannon burned star pressure in yaw points. And they were back. Agony and traumatic Nebula Ground Zero, the philology of survival. At the bridge of a battered but resilient cruiser, a young officer, Lyra Ortiz, monitored the quickly morphing battle. Her hands danced across the controls, coordinating squadrons of fighters and transmitting real-time tactical updates. Against a backdrop of swirling debris and splashing code, her eyes glowed with the fierce determination of a survivor, someone, after everything, who had faith in a better manuscript. To her, this battle was so much more than a literal fight to the death. It was a reclaiming of their very identity, and a vow to each soul who had ever dared to believe Earth could be free. Individual acts of heroism were scattered throughout the grand narrative of victory across the fleet. A small force of human fighters, conducting a desperate diversion, pierced the remains of the alien fleet's defensive screen. Their task was simple: rid the remaining pockets of the enemy, and ensure no scattered remnants of tyranny could coalesce into a threat once again. Known only as a celestial force of destruction in the 26th century, these pilots obliterated an alien frigate that had coordinated retreat attempts. The explosion that followed was a display of resistance, a crack in the universe sealed only to be filled with the colors, the revenge of reclamation. Even as the invaders stumbled, fear took hold. The alien high command, once the very definition of untouchable power, now raced to salvage its collapsing legacy. Arrogance gave way to panic. Coordinated strategy fell to disarray. In October, the mighty horde that shaped a harbinger to the end of mankind fell into broke, solitary, adrift fragments of their former capability. It was a sour turn, an inevitable payback that they thought the alien forces never thought would have been possible. But in the frenzy, a moment of clarity emerged. For the human fleet, the battle was not simply the physical destruction of their enemies. It was an act of symbolic rejuvenation. Each vessel that fell represented a crippling blow to the machine, which had long since sought to subdue the human soul. The enemy lines were no more, now that human warships shredded them like wet paper, erasing the false narrative left behind on Earth that had proclaimed it defeated. As the confrontation drew to an end, the remaining alien forces had been forced to withdraw. Their flagship had been a fearsome monument to their ambition, but was now little more than driftwood, its power snuffed by the ceaseless ingenuity of man. It was reeling, looking at very alien ways of looking, consuming, moving, and the vacuum left by all that was an echo, a roar of silence. Speaking of what was next, the all-encompassing determination of a people who had risen from the genocidal ashes. Admiral Marlowe, watching from the command deck, let himself smile briefly and grimly at the retreating enemy. His voice, steady but suffused with the gravity of victory, sent a message to all those ships in the fleet. We have regained our legacy. The spirit of humanity cannot be broken. Let it be known across the stars. Those words reverberated not just through his crew, but across the universe, symbolizing the arrival of a new epoch for sentience itself. Even humanistic, appropriate toward the universe yet previously bewildered at the Earth's catapulsion, were significant yet to the universe, which was mise en place to replace this force with something stronger, something stubborn, which is exactly what Earth inhabitants enabled. It was the focal point of their salvation, where the abandoned remnants of a broken society grew into the blueprint of their future. And it was an unqualified victory, an affirmation of the work and perseverance, and the eternal hope that no conqueror can ever obliterate. To the tune of 100 glorious songs, 1,000 dancing lights, humanity shall rise again to touch the stars. After that overwhelming victory, the celestial stage shifted once more, now to depict a scene of quiet reflection and guarded optimism. Before them, the once indomitable alien fleet was now but a scattered wreckage of its former selves, now burning fallen stars. For it had been a long, dimly lit twilight, a time when all believed that humanity had fallen. The truth was that humanity had only ever gathered strength in secret, only to burst forth in this, our time. Their echoes lingered in the hollowed-out remains of their world, and in the silent aftermath, distant civilizations and once-conquering foes were made to bear witness to the stunning truth. The unbroken light of humanity had inscribed a new chapter in the tale of annihilation. On Earth's burned landscape, and in the secret enclaves where survivors had kept alive dreams of revival, whispers of hope became triumphant pronouncements. And it wasn't a victory that was defined just in the destruction of an alien force, but in the reclaiming of a legacy thousands of years old. Memorials to the fallen started to rise from the ruins, symbolic beacons signifying the return of a civilization that had been written off and taken for granted. And everywhere in the galaxy, the scattered remains of humanity rejoiced together, hearts uplifted in the knowledge that the war was over and the struggle had birthed a new age of possibility. Admiral Elias Marlowe is no stranger to turbulence, figuratively or literally. Looking into deep black space, he contemplated the immense price of victory. Each defeat had served as a testament to the sacrifices of countless spirits who had never given up hope. He thought, of course, of the countless men and women who had sacrificed everything in the dark, who were now reunified in every brimming pulse of human will. No ordinary military conquest. This was a rebirth, an evolution that would forever change the course of galactic history. For the alien factions, the defeat was a shattering blow, a hard lesson in the dangers of underestimating a people motivated by a will to be free. The commanders once privy to great glory retreated to remote castles, the hubris gone, replaced by quiet reflection. They rewrote plans and redesigned strategies to confront the daunting truth that the cosmos was no longer theirs to exert unabashed control over. As the destruction unfolded, leaders in the halls of power on countless planets weighed in on what it meant on this unprecedented upside down, saying they knew that the next world order had already been undone. As peace slowly returned to the ravaged battlefields, the human Warfleet started the long and painful journey of reconstruction and contemplation. While the scars of war marred them, the survivors returned not as victors, but guardians of a reborn destiny. It was a journey of loss and sacrifice, but out of despair arose a message that echoed through the cosmos. Earth had not fallen, it had been reborn. This would go down in history the day the human Warfleet returned, a memorial of defeat makers, an ambition of refinement and authentic adventure. The universe would be forever shaped by their rebirths, with the indelible stamp of humanity's victorious return etched in its fabric, a reminder that even the darkest night can forge the flames of determination that bring vibrant new morning to the endless day.